Let's see. All right, it looks like we are live. Madeline, take it away.
All right. Hello. Welcome to our community pairing stream. Today, we're going to talk about documentation and migrating a site from using Remark plugins to using MDX with Aisha and community member Benjamin.
All right, awesome. Thank you for the intro, Madeline. I am excited for this. This is going to be my first community pairing stream, so it should be fun. So this session, Benjamin, you actually proposed the session, so maybe you'd like to talk a little bit about what you'd like folks to get out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so first off, for those who don't know me, I am Benjamin Lannon. I am a web developer in upstate New York. And I've contributed to Gatsby for now, I'd say about 2 years. So I've been doing this for a while. But with this specific contribution, I was talking with some colleagues, and they were saying they had a site that was built with Gatsby Transformer Remark. So it's just normal Remark files as you would do if you went through the Gatsby tutorial or if you looked at docs on just Remark. And they have those sites. They built it up. They've customized it. But then they've been hearing about this new product called MDX. And they're wanting to kind of transition their website without need to start from scratch. And if we go over to the Gatsby's docs, go to docs. If we go to the reference guides and go into MDX, it talks about kind of what MDX is, how you can drop in components by just importing them and dropping React components into it directly. And if you go to a getting started, it kind of shows, hey, you can start out with pulling down the starter or loading in and pulling in the plugins, dropping into your plugins array inside your Gatsby config, and it kind of discusses that. But it really doesn't discuss. I really didn't have a point. There wasn't a point where it's I have a site built with Remark, and I want to take that and bring it over to MDX without really needing to start from scratch. So with that, I kind of got a draft PR, and I think I wanted to just for this session kind of go through what I have right now, and Aisha, we could kind of just go through how you go through and review something, review a PR that comes in like this.
Yeah, absolutely. So for folks who don't know, my name is Aisha Blake, and I am a software engineer on the Gatsby team, working specifically on documentation. It does sound like we've got potentially some sound issues. So I am, as always, really grateful for our captioner. So if you are having sound issues, know that Caitlin is working on.
Yeah, I'll be keeping an eye on it. I know, I've got Twitch open and it sounds okay, so it may be an issue with your browser or, somebody, it looks like it's different if you're in portrait or landscape mode on the phone, so.
All right. Yeah, so let's talk about this PR. So we're gonna talk a little bit about my process for reviewing a PR, which for the documentation, which does include actually following whatever the documentation someone is proposing. So let's have a look. So we've got Benjamin's screen up right now, and we'll take a look at his PR. All right, so first up, when we are when I'm looking at a PR, I am usually going to want to take a look at the issue to see, like, okay, well, how long has this issue been around? Who proposed it? What is the reasoning? Is this something I should be prioritizing? And I think you also opened this issue. Is that right?
Yep, correct. Yep, and actually, I linked to the PR over in the Twitch chat, just so if people want to follow along, they can.
Beautiful.
Yep. So
this is a really nice. This is a really nice summary of the problem that we've got right now. We do have issue templates. So if you notice something in the docs that you think is missing or incorrect, you can come to the Gatsby project on GitHub, and you can submit a new issue, and we'll have this sort of scaffolded out for you, and we'll give you some. It'll give you some structure so that you're not sort of making up the problem as you go. So this is telling us that this is a suggestion for a new document, some recommended topics. So we want to include updating the Gatsby node file, we want to show how to update a div, update the GraphQL query and the templates to MDX. That kind of gives me the sense like, okay, this is pretty well fleshed out. This person has thought about what they would really want to see in a document like this. And so I get the sense, okay, this is at least to one person in the community, like this is important to them. And so at this point, if I'm just reading this for the first time, I might engage, I might ask additional questions, but this is looking pretty good to me. And we've actually already got a pull request that would address, that would actually close this issue. And do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think you said it right. Like I tried to put kind of as much like the information that I wanted to see out of a document like this, and like the things, like kind of bullet points of these are the high level things that you would need to change, like that I would want to see in a page like this. Okay.
Awesome. All right. So let's take a look at the PR itself.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. So I opened up as draft PR, and I didn't have much of a description at the moment, but I did link back to it. But we could look at the code here, or I actually do have it up in a running instance, local instance here as well.
Yeah. So when I am reviewing documentation PRs, typically what I will do is, it depends on the type of PR. So the type of document that I'm looking at. So in this case, this would be a reference guide. And we'll talk about the different types of documents that you can contribute. But since this is a reference guide, there is going to be probably a decent amount of information in here. I'm going to start off by running this locally, and I'm going to check out. I'm going to see how that looks in the browser. So cool. We can see we're migrating Remark to MDX. That is really it's well defined, and so we can walk through and see, okay, what are the things that we're going to need to do, and keeping in mind who is doing this, who is interested in migrating Remark to MDX. So right off the bat, people who already have an existing blog using the Gatsby Transformer Remark, but want to use MDX, And great. So we have our audience there as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Now, something that I kind of left out that I've seen in other pages in the docs that maybe a question is, I see where like sometimes there's pages where it's saying like you've read through these pages before as like prerequisites for this, or we're going to start out maybe with this starter. So maybe a question of like, should we add in a thing of like, for me, I started with the Gatsby starter blog as kind of a baseline for this document. And then I did like bootstrapped things up. Should that be something in here that we say like you could start like if you've built your site using Gatsby starter blog or something similar, or like in if you base it upon the tutorial, where should we go with that?
Yeah. So one thing that you could do, is to include an example, and that might make sense here. But in general, when you want to give folks kind of a baseline, you can include an example in your PR. I don't know that I would necessarily suggest it in this case. We can kind of we'll move through and we'll see if that makes sense. In this case, I would include that in link form. So, for example, in this first paragraph, you might say something as sort of a catch-all. So if somebody has made it to this page, but maybe they're not as familiar with MDX, or if what they actually want is to find out more about how Remark works, that first paragraph is a good spot to kind of catch them before they get too deep in the weeds.
Okay.
All right. How are we doing, Caitlin, on set?
So the issue is just basically like if you're on headphones, we can only hear Benjamin in the left ear, and then it cuts in and out on the right ear. I'm not sure what we can do about that, but I mean, I don't. Maybe just listen with your left headphone. I'm a little. Because this is kind of precarious as it is, I'm a little hesitant to like try and have Benjamin disconnect or something. So
I know exactly what the issue is. My sound is coming from a XLR mic, and it's going through, and the interface is sending stereo sound, so everyone hears me in my left ear, but it looks like the software, I can't like send it down to just mono where it comes in both ears. So
okay, well, we will roll with it. At least we know what's happening.
Yes.
All right. Cool. So okay. So if I'm walking through a reference guide, and again, we'll come back to the different types of documentation that you can submit. Then I'm going to want to actually do whatever the document is walking me through. So, Benjamin, if you would be so kind as to get us started.
Yeah, so I could, so I could actually bring up a instance of VS Code, and we can do this. Like, we could do it on my side.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so let me go get, I'm gonna open up just a new tab in my terminal. I'll just bring this back over for a second. So I'm going to start out by pulling down the Gatsby starter blog, just so as that baseline of we have a site that's built out and fleshed out with Remark. It has that context of, and it has some markdown pages already, so that layer is already fleshed out, and then we can do the migration step. So I'm going to do npx Gatsby CLI new. I think, yep. And then we're going to say, let's try remark to MDX.
Cool.
And I'm going to pull Gatsby JS/Gatsby starter blog. And that should just pull down. So that's going to run the Gatsby side, and that should just pull down the starter blog to kind of scaffold up our baseline.
Yeah, so quick rundown of what's happening with that command. So we're doing this with npx, and that avoids installing Gatsby CLI globally on the computer. So we're running that command. We can still use that Gatsby new command. We are calling this directory that we're creating remark to MDX, and we're using the Gatsby starter block as the starter to kick us off.
Yeah, I think something to also point out of like with this is I typed in npx Gatsby CLI remark, so new, and then remark to MDX is the name of the folder that's going to generate. But you can actually, I actually typed in just a I typed in an owner and like a repo owner and a repo name, which is something that's you may not know it, because like here I could type in a full get URL to a repo, or you can actually just type in the owner name. If it's on GitHub, you can type the owner name and owner repo, and it will still pull it down from that location, as we see here.
That is a good point. Oh, and it looks like our friend AliPixel is here. They're in a whole bunch of our streams. So
awesome.
Yeah. And some of my personal ones too.
Yeah, and I see.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for sticking with us, despite any technical issues.
Yeah, like I can think of a way to fix this, but I don't want to do it live. I don't want to cause more issues.
I appreciate that.
Benjamin, do you think you could make the terminal font a little bit bigger?
Yes, actually.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, now I have this situation where it's like it kind of the Gatsby CLI kind of hangs, but if I control C it should exit out. Yep, there we are.
Oh, we got there eventually.
We got there. So I'm gonna do code dot open up a instance. And then if I like zoom this in a little. So now we have our Gatsby, we have our folder, we have some pages and templates. And then if we go to content blog, we have some pages that are marked down. So we have that there. And then let's just pull up our terminal here. Well, I think that's good. And then if I do yarn develop, it should spin up the site, and we should be able to see that the site from a base install will work.
Sweet. All right. So while that is thinking, I'm checking the chat. We're looking good. Cool. So in the meantime, let's talk a little bit about the different kinds of. Oh, we're working. The different kinds of docs that you can submit, and I'm actually going to drop a link in the chat. And this will give you an idea of your options, kind of when you're thinking through. Okay, well, what I know that I want to add something to the documentation. I know that something is missing, but what form should it take? So what we're working on right now is a reference guide, which is this sort of pretty full and maybe a little more general document about a topic. And what I'm looking for in a reference guide is could somebody come here, learn about the thing, the topic, as well as find maybe several different specific actions that they might want to take, versus a tutorial, which you'll also find in that link that I shared, which is a straight step-by-step process that you would walk a user through.
Yeah. So
let's pick it up.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to stop this and start this again because I noticed I actually have the instance of the Gatsby repo also running on 8000.
Interesting.
So for some reason, the Gatsby didn't pick up that this was running. So I'm going to actually stop this. And I think I can just add -p and a port, so like 8002 or something.
Is it -p?
It's -p or I think -- port.
That feels right.
Yeah, if you do Gatsby develop, if you do any of the Gatsby commands and then do --help, it'll kind of say here are all the various things and options you can do. So now we're running on 8002.
Beautiful.
And here is our blog. So we have some pages. Right. We have some content. We have, like, you can see syntax heading. If you go to this page, we can see we have that image. So, and if I refresh, you can see it fades in. So it's using Gatsby image. So everything works.
Awesome. Cool.
So, yeah.
So if I'm walking through this contribution, and I want to test out, the doc itself. And this is something that you should do whenever you're writing documentation for, in my opinion, anything. But certainly for Gatsby, you want to walk through your own doc. So in this case, we're kind of flowing through the steps, and we'll maybe flesh this out a little more. But the first thing in here is talking about adding Gatsby plugin MDX.
Yep.
And so we're actually just going to walk through the steps that we've got here.
Yeah. Yep. And I think, so starting out, we have just 2 npm scripts. If I go back to this repo, I think we have a yarn log file here. So I'm going to actually do it for my purposes. I'm going to do yarn, but I think, is there something in the style guide that kind of comments on what command you should use? Yes.
So we typically reference npm in the docs. And part of that is just for consistency, so that folks aren't accidentally mixing package managers.
Yeah. So I think this is good that I have npm install and npm remove like this.
Awesome. Yes, that looks great.
Yeah. So I'm gonna take this one. So I'm gonna copy just those ones. I'm gonna stop this and I'm gonna yarn add. So it's same thing as npm install. Yarn. So I'm adding MDX itself, the React portion of MDX, and the Gatsby plugin. So I'll install those. It's loading. And then I'm going to do yarn remove Gatsby transformer remark, because now as we're switching over to plugin MDX, we don't need remark. We don't at least need the Gatsby transform remark plugin itself. Now, if we go into the config file actually, and I hide this for a second, we can actually scroll down and we can see in transform remark we actually have some other sub plugins as well. But I think later on in the document we actually can keep these and still use these in MDX. So if I go here, okay, so I uninstalled that. So now if we go into the package JSON, we should see we have MDX, so we have MDX, React, and then MDX plugin MDX. And then if we go like to the diff, we can also see that we removed Gatsby transform remark.
Looks good.
So that's that step. Let's go back to the docs and see what it is.
All right, so according to our doc, the next step is that instead of listing Gatsby transform remark in our Gatsby config file, we are going to use Gatsby plugin MDX. And so in this instance, one note that I would add is actually to include the title of the document or the title of the file that this code goes in your code snippet.
Yeah, so I think if we go to Gatsby, this could run. So this is the snippet we're currently working on. So I think in Gatsby, if you do, I think it's colon and then title.
Correct. Colon title equals, and then the name of the file.
Config.js. So if I save that, okay, so it's rebuilding.
Yeah, it's thinking.
So let me shrink this down.
And so once that's finished, you should see the title show up on the page.
Yep. But I think while we're waiting, maybe it's a good thing to talk about, maybe add some depth, because I think this was very like a thing you do. I say like remove this and then diff these, like this is the diff between the two things. But maybe I'm saying update the plugins option with Gatsby remark plugins. Maybe I should talk about why you do that. So like,
should absolutely talk about why.
So would you say like doing it above or like maybe below? Where would you say?
Personally, I would prefer some explanation of what's happening, and then follow that up with code. Okay. So yeah. So let's give that a shot.
Yeah. So I'm gonna say that. So maybe instead of just update the plugins, so I'm gonna say replace this with Gatsby plugin MDX. And then maybe talk about all like any sub plugin of Gatsby transform remark can still work with MDX. So sub plugins of Gatsby transform remark with Gatsby plugin. But I could say maybe like all of them work by updating the plugins option with two Gatsby remark plugins, and then have the code snippet.
Let's roll with that. It definitely is a good step in the right direction. Yep. What I'm thinking about when I am reading through someone's proposed documentation is that I want to anticipate any pitfalls that somebody might walk into, especially if they're new to Gatsby. And so when I'm reading documentation, that is kind of the perspective that I'm taking most of the time. I will keep in mind folks who are a little more advanced, but I want to make sure that the documentation is as approachable as possible. And so if I can anticipate any questions that somebody might have when they're reading through this documentation, or any gotchas that they might run into when they're following it, I'll try to include that in the documentation ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
So this is looking good. We've now got the name of the file included in the code snippet. And so that alone can cut down on a lot of confusion. So we've got these headings, which actually do include the file name, but I would suggest that you might, rather than saying, update this file, update that file, you might talk about how you're updating each file, since we're going to include the name of the file in that code snippet.
So, since we're kind of we're telling, like, they can already see, oh, this is an update in Gatsby config. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I have this. So I have kind of that. Yeah. So how would you maybe suggest that?
So for your heading, I might say something like, replace Gatsby transformer remark with Gatsby plugin MDX. That's a little long, but that's okay.
Yeah. Remark with Gatsby plugin. Yep.
Replace or replacing.
Okay. Yep. Replacing. Yep.
And also keep in mind, as a general statement, for each of the different types of documentation that we look for, there are also doc templates. So you can start with a template and kind of use that to shape whatever document you're trying to write. All right, so this is looking pretty good. We can continue to add on as we go, but let's take a look at the rest of the doc.
Yeah, so I'd say let's first, maybe we could do this, like we'll do this just as a step in our repo. So we're in here, and let's go into Gatsby config. So here we would replace Gatsby transformer mark with Gatsby plugin MDX, and then replace plugins with Gatsby remark plugins. And that's all we're going to do for the time being. So next, we're going to scroll down and talk about Gatsby nodes. So I was commenting in basically in the create pages API call. I'm saying like when you see like a query for all markdown remarks. So if we go back to here and go to our Gatsby node file, we have a previous, like we have this GraphQL query of saying like getting all the markdown files and then go build pages out for them. So I was commenting, basically you change this here, instead of all markdown remark, you do all MDX. And then as well, also update it on create node, which creates the slugs for these pages to be of type MDX. So like here, if we scroll down to onCreate node, it's looking for markdown remark as a type for the nodes that it's building, but instead we want to use MDX. So it's MDX instead.
Awesome.
Yep.
And so in this case, similar notes, I would actually include, especially since these are pretty small but very specific changes, I would definitely include diffs just like you did in the previous section.
Okay. So yeah, so let's copy portion this. So like, let's maybe take this here. So like this away graphical, and then just have this here. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go to my other one, and then diff title is Gatsby node. So I'm going to paste this code. I'm just going to bring it back, and I'm going to have this be a plus, and then have a minus here, and do all mark down mark. So if I save that, and then come back here, we're placing, so you have this Gatsby node, and instead of all remark down remark, and that, actually, we have to have, well, over here, we want to have the parentheses, so both
Exactly.
will work. Yep. Yeah. So that's for this one. So that's changing there. And then talking about on create node, we can go in and scroll down here. And then maybe we'll copy like this first section up to here. I think that's a good kind of reference of saying like,
yeah, you definitely, when you are thinking about your code snippets that you want to include in the documentation, you want to think about not only what is the change that I'm trying to communicate, but also how do I give people enough context that they know where they should be looking, as well as what they should be changing.
Yeah. So MDX is going to be markdown remark. So that should be coming shortly. As saved. Let me just put these side by side so we can have things here.
That's great.
Come on. Oh, there we go. Is it still building?
All right. Okay.
But yeah, so this will kind of just have that diff and have the two sections. So it doesn't look like it's updating here, but I think we can kind of continue. Oh, there we are.
Woo!
So now we're saying like, here's the onCreate node, and previously we had remark and remark. Now we're switching to MDX.
That's great.
So that's that. So next is section about updating your, well, I think this is a situation where you can, if you want to just switch all your files to be MDX, you can do that to have the .mdx extension. Otherwise, we could have it where we can accept both MD and MDX files by adding this option in the Gatsby config file. So let's take to kind of step a little bit. I'm just going to add Gatsby config.js here, so we add say where it is.
You'll want title equals.
Oh yeah, title. Yep.
Yeah.
And so I'm saying so one choice we could do is in here in our project, we could go in here and change every single file. So I could go and right click and say MDX, do this for every single file. But I think for this instance, I'm going to go into our Gatsby config and add an options. So it says extensions. I'm going to say Markdown and, well, let me look at my docs. Okay, so it's .md.
And .mdx.
And .mdx. So now, no matter which file type is added, MDX will see it and generate the nodes that we can then use for this.
Awesome. Yeah, and I would include some form of that explanation in this section in the doc as well.
Yeah. So I'm talking this. So maybe now this addition any both files that end with .mdx or .md will be seen by Gatsby plugin MDX. Like that?
Something like that. Yeah. As a general rule, when we are, I try to avoid passive voice in the docs. So this is a really, really great example. So when, rather than saying something like files that end with MDX or MD will be seen by Gatsby plugin MDX, I might say with this edition, Gatsby plugin MDX will see.
Oh, so yeah, flip it around.
Yeah. So that sentence becomes more active.
Well, or
we'll see both MDX and Markdown files.
So both. Yep. Cool.
And you've got 3 E's in C.
I think there's.
I have actually started using. Let's see. Do I have it? Mm-hmm. I'll see if I can find it. I've actually started using a spell check. A spell check plugin or extension is the word I'm looking for in VS Code, which I've been liking. We do have a bot that runs on Markdown files in Gatsby, and it is aggressive. And so you may see on your PRs a bot saying, "Hey, this is misspelled. Did you mean X, Y, Z?" And it may or may not be correct. Often it'll be a name or something along those lines.
Yeah. What I usually do is I take an entire file, open up Microsoft Word, and just let that do it. But that only goes so far because sometimes it doesn't pick up like more grammatical things rather than just spelling.
For sure. And that's one of the things that I do when I'm reading any documentation contribution. I have always been an editor at heart. And so I will do some of that myself, but I'm only human and I will make mistakes as well. So it's great to have some kind of process to try and cut down on those types of things that actually end up in your PR.
Yeah.
All right. So we've updated the extensions that we can accept.
Yep.
What happens next?
So next, I'm commenting basically similar. So next we want to update various things. So we have 2 pages that we want to basically React components that we want to update in our project. So if we come back to our project, if I go into source pages index, and open this up, if we scroll down, we can see that we have our page query that kind of queries for all of our blog posts. Previously, we had it where it's all markdown remark here. And then we come in and it loads in like the node, and then we have the slug, an excerpt, maybe description. So content that we want to see on like this front page, so like this kind of content. That's kind of all loaded here. And then we come in at the top and this query is then run and it will plop the data into data, and then we pull it out in our React component right here. So data.all markdown.edges is now posts, and then we handle that down in the actual JSX. So I was commenting here. So now similar to, we want wherever you see wherever you use all markdown remark in a GraphQL query, we want to change to all MDX. So in that context, we would come down here and change this to all MDX down here. I'm going to copy that and I'm going to bring it up to here where it says posts and drop that here. Now, the thing is, the Gatsby starter blog is using TypeScript for some files. So it's saying, hey, we don't know what all MDX is. So if we scroll up here, we have this kind of type definition. So then we would just have to kind of replace it here. But so some starters may not have this, but some may. So it's just like wherever I see all markdown remark, I want to replace it with all MDX.
Right.
So that's yep. So that's the first part, and then I'm saying in our blog post template, we want to render the MDX, and we want to first pull in this MDX renderer component from Gatsby plugin MDX. So I'm gonna pull this in. We want to change some of the stuff. So if I go over to, so this file is good for here. In templates, if we go to the blog post and bring this out, it's very similar where at the bottom we have that query again. So again, we're gonna have to, so this is instead of all markdown remark, it's gonna be just a single file. So instead of that, we want to just do MDX alone. We want to come up here, change it here again. So MDX, so that's there. But the way that transformer mark renders the content is different than how MDX does it, because here it returns us a raw HTML, and then we just insert it right here directly. Where MDX is using this MDX renderer. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna copy this. I'm gonna put it I'll put it up here with our other imports that are not like relative. So I'm gonna drop that in. And now I want to, so I came back here. I loaded that in, and I'm saying in the GraphQL query, we want to change the HTML field in MDX to body. So we have this query. Maybe we'll highlight this body right here. So if we go back to our, here we want to scroll down. So I think it was -- highlight line.
Highlight line. Yep.
Yep. And once that comes through, then this line will now be highlighted, so we can say this is like, we're adding this here. And then we just have some front matter. And then finally, we want to replace this section here with our MDX renderer. So
I want to pop in with a question from chat. Ali Pixel asks, will this setup work if I have random bits of HTML embedded in my markdown files? Wouldn't this be an issue for the MDX plugin?
So that's a good question. So in MDX, that's the question of like, what if I have HTML inside my markdown by default? So it's the thing that when you transition to MDX, everything is now JSX, which is the React's templating language on top of HTML. So it looks like HTML, but it's not fully HTML. So for some cases, it may work, but others you have to be careful. So like if you have like a div that has a class that says a class of header maybe, or some class name, you have to change class to be class name because that's how React handles it. So that's usually the transitions. Now, a question I have for Aisha, is that something that maybe should be in this document or should it be somewhere else?
I would absolutely include it in this document. Yes.
Okay.
That is a great question.
Because it's like that could be a gotcha, that if you are plopping in HTML somewhere and you're building this HTML, for the most part it'll work, but you have to just be careful because it's not raw HTML anymore. It is now JSX, which will be compiled down.
Yeah, absolutely. And I might put that in somewhere in this section here, where we're talking about actually swapping out the way that
The rendering.
Yes, exactly, the way that we're rendering our content.
Yeah,
makes sense to me.
Yeah. So,
Since we are running low on time, I'm not gonna ask that you figure out how to word that right now. But yes, absolutely.
Yeah, let's actually. I think this is like the last step. So let's go in and do this portion just so we can, because we got like 10 minutes left. So I think we should be able to get through all of this.
Yeah.
So we're gonna replace this with body. We're gonna come up to, so that was body down here, and now we have to go look where we actually render it. So here we're gonna instead drop a MDX renderer, and we're gonna put in post.body. And then we want to delete this line where it was the dangerously set in HTML. So I'm gonna save that, and now this is the point where, for this case, everything should work. So I'm gonna do that develop again, and we'll see how it turns out. Got some errors.
Right.
Oh, yep. It looks like I forgot a location. So this looks like the Gatsby. Yep, Gatsby node line 35. Line 35. Yep. So here we forgot to change it to all MDX. So it's a slight error. So let's try that again. Okay, it's transforming. It's building queries. It's running queries.
Looking good.
Yep. So it looks like it's built. So if I go back to here and refresh this, we got the site. We click on it. Stuff still renders. Now let's test this out. Let's kind of drop in some React in here. So let's go into like this. What page are we on? New beginnings. And open up this file, and let's put in a div that has like maybe a purple styling. So we're gonna have a div, and we're gonna say actually, yeah, we're gonna say hello world, and then we're gonna add a style tag. So we have style and then double curlies, and we're gonna say background color of let's do back purple.
Appropriate.
And we can see there it is. So that contrast looks a little bad. So we'll like add a color white, so we get better color contrast. But now we have this component here where we have, like, we're actually inserting React code into our Markdown files. And if we had like maybe a button that was styled and we had it in a separate component, we could then just import that component in and use it as, just drop it in. And I think I actually comment on that in here. So I have like a section of like, hey, maybe if you want to insert React components into your new MDX files, you can go here, you can click here, and it'll bring you to that page, show you how you can do such.
Yeah, and I would maybe, so typically we'll have an additional resources section in reference guide. And so I might include that there and say additional resources, and then say, and something along the lines of, to find out how to insert React components in your MDX files, check out importing and using components in MDX.
Okay.
And then any other sort of supporting resources, if there were pages that you found helpful when you were writing the doc, if there are maybe more general things that folks should look at, more general resources, that could be helpful as well.
Awesome.
But yeah, we're coming up on time. If there are folks in the chat, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, now is going to be a good time. But I do want to take a minute and just say thank you to Benjamin. This was really fun. I've enjoyed it a lot. And I'm actually, I don't get a chance to talk face to face with contributors very often about their docs contributions. So this is a good time for me.
Yeah. And I think just to the people listening in, it's a great thing of like, I could have done this entirely by myself. I could have submitted the PR and maybe me and Aisha could have done the conversation in the GitHub PR. But I think it's really resourceful to actually have the opportunity to really get like hop on a call with the team and actually do this live. It really, because you have that experience where you can actually just go back and forth and change things on the fly rather than need to do something and then Aisha makes a comment and I need to do whatever it is, and it really is useful to have like live code review or docs review. Like I think it's interesting because it's technical docs. It's kind of goes between code review and a like documentation review with this. But I think like it's really just useful to just really reach out, because I think go to the contributing section. Go to community programming. Like I've done this. This is the first time I've done it when we have it streamed, but I've done plenty of these times before, and it's really useful to just ask out like, hey, maybe I want some help doing like some portion, or I have a PR that I've been working on. I want some live feedback. Like this is a very good thing that not many communities have really. Like it's a very good resource that people should use.
Thank you. Yeah. Madeline, you want to bring us home?
Sure, that was fantastic. Thank you for taking the time to go through writing documentation and testing documentation, both Benjamin and Aisha. And thank you to everyone who tuned in, asked questions. We really appreciate it. Everyone have a good rest of your day.
Well, and thanks, Amanda, for captioning.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right, we'll see y'all later.